Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Tax Hack Show, where we give you all the best hacks to save you thousands, if not millions, on taxes. I am your host, Trevor Leparle, and accompanied by my full-time guest again, Kevin Brenner. I just can't get enough of him, apparently, so he's always here with me. But Kevin, welcome back.
All right. Well, good to see you again.
Yeah, right. Hopefully it is. But anyways, if this is your first time here, I'd strongly recommend going back to last week's podcast. Last week, we really went into detail about insurance and all the different types of life insurance policies you can get. And today we're going to be going into the OPM policy, and that's a deep dive into it. So you can't really watch this one or listen to this one without watching the first one or listening to the first one first. So go back and do that, and then come back here and then come back into it, and we'll do it. So if you're stopping now, stop now, and then go back and come back here. So sweet. Anyways, we'll hop right into it. Kevin, we finished out last week talking about the OPM strategy. And like I said, during the last podcast, I was like, mind blown, trying to bring everything in at the same time, understand all of the information. So can you start off with a simple breakdown of the OPM strategy, and then we'll gradually, build on top of that?
All right. I want to start off with a qualifier, though. These concepts seem more complicated than they actually are in practice because it's just new information. When you first started driving a car, back in the days when we had stick shifts, you were so distracted by working the clutch and working everything else, and having to look behind to make sure you weren't backing into something, and you're trying to watch the signs and watch your speed and watch everything else. And even today with today's cars, when you're first learning how to drive, it's work just to go a couple miles because everything is new. Now you move through traffic using your blinker. Hopefully, I hope you're one of those people that use your blinker. I hate those that don't, right? So be careful in California. So but you're doing all those things second nature the entire time, carrying a conversation with the person next to you. And if you had to think back about the drive, you don't even remember it. It was all autopilot, right? So you're driving a car from point A to point B, and you don't even remember the trip, right? Because it all becomes automated. Well, these things are just, even though there's details you got to know, I just want to impart to you that it's not as complicated as it sounds. It really isn't. All right. So, and to analyze it, just keep it simple. So we talked about previously the different types of insurance contracts and how they work. The whole life been around for a very, very long time. There's certain commentators that hate them for reasons where they've never actually done the math, or they wouldn't hate them. And then there's other variations of that into the universal life, index universal life, GUL, guaranteed universal life. Then they have the variable universal life. Never buy one. Please never buy one. There's always one of the others that's a better deal than that, no matter what they show you on the brochures. We don't ever use those. And we've done the math. So, and then you get into the indexed universal and how to use those. And those have a lot of benefits. They take a little longer to build up to use for some of these strategies than whole life. And then I want you to understand, what is the most efficient way of putting the money in the contract? Okay. All right. So this works for everybody, but it works way better if you own a business or you're self-employed. But it still works for everybody. What if you made the first year's, they call it premium, but most of it's a savings account, and some of it goes to insurance, right? Because there has to be, so it's an insurance contract, and you want it to be an insurance contract. There's a lot of benefits come along with it being classified as an insurance contract. What if you made the first year payment, and there were dozens of banks that would make the next 14 payments annually, every year for you? Well, one, why would a bank do that? And two, what do they charge? Banks never do anything for free, right?
Yeah.
Okay. First, why would a bank do that? If you use the right insurance contract, structured the right way, they have to be structured a certain way, the bank won't do it. It becomes what's called a legal reserve instrument. All right, so what is a legal reserve instrument? Certain bonds and treasuries and mortgage notes, certain mortgage notes, that's why banks do mortgage lending. Those are all legal reserve instruments, meaning they're an instrument that qualifies to be held in the bank's legal reserves. What is legal reserves? The bank has to have a certain percentage of legal reserves against its deposits to be a bank. and the bank makes a profit on those. Okay. So when you buy a CD that's right now paying what, 4%? Interest rates are up. They're paying you 4 because they're earning 8 or above, or they wouldn't pay you 4. There's got to be a spread there. The bank's got to make a profit on it. So your certificate of deposit is a legal reserve instrument that they can lend against. You understand? So when you have them lend against your insurance policy, just like your house or the bond or whatever becomes the collateral for the note. Well, why would I go into debt on an insurance contract? The same way you went into debt to buy a house, because it's more profitable than paying rent. Term insurance is renting the insurance. Permanent insurance is owning the insurance and the profits on the cash value. That's like paying cash for a house. Or what if you got a mortgage? Because the mortgage payments are cheaper than rent. What if there was a spread on the money, like a landlord? So why would a landlord buy a property and rent it out to somebody when it has a mortgage on it? People think, oh, if you pay off the mortgage, you make more money. Actually, you don't. I can show you you don't. If the mortgage payment's $1,000, he's getting $1,800 a month in rent. Let's assume the mortgage includes property taxes, insurance. He's got $800 a month positive cash flow. So what if you put $10,000 a year in an insurance contract, and it cost you $8,000 to do it, and the $2,000 yours, and the $2,000 earns 6, 7, 8% a year on top of that?
Starts to add up.
So let's say you put $10,000 in, and you earn, we'll just use 6. They do way better than that, but we'll just call it 6. Put $10,000 in once, that earns 6%. The bank puts in $10,000, charges 8, you get to keep the 2. Then the next year they do it again. The next year they do it again. The next year they do it again. Right? So you're earning 6% on your money and 2% on the bank's. Well, at the end of year 2, there's some expenses involved. So we'll just call it 1% arbitrage. And the policy is the only collateral. They don't even run your credit report. I mean, you're not guaranteeing anything. The policy's guaranteeing everything. You're not on the hook for $1. So you earn 6 on your money, 1% on the bank's money. The next year, the bank makes another payment. Now you're earning 6 on your money, but you already earned some compounding interest. You're earning another 1% on the bank's money, and now 1% on year 2. So what are you now earning on your deposits? On how much cash you have in the policy that came out of your pocket to go in the policy. Now you're up to 8%. Next year, you're up to 9. Next year, you're up to 10, and there's a compounding on the money. There's compound interest earning. Can you see by year 15 how you could be at 22 to 25% on your deposits? You see, that property owner that bought that piece of real estate that's appreciating 3 or 4% a year, he's making about 16 to 18% cash on cash return on his money. Wait a minute, the real estate, he gets a little bit of the rent, and the real estate only appreciates, we'll call it 4%. How can he make so much money? Because he bought a $100,000 property with $20,000 down. What is he earning on his $20,000? That's why you don't ever pay cash for real estate. You just don't. And you don't ever pay off the mortgage. It reduces your rate of return. These cash value insurance contracts, if you take advantage of our OPM, which means other people's money, the OPM program we have, and the lenders lined up ready to do it, that's how you can take a 6% investment, like that house is a 4% investment with a bunch of expenses. Yet they're making 16 or 18% on a rental, right?
Yeah.
Now you have a policy that's functioning the same way. You're using effectively a mortgage to buy the policy the same as you used a mortgage to buy the rental property. So that's how you get a 6% investment to make 20%. Is what are you making on the money you have invested? You're getting these spreads. So the next question is always, yeah, but I could lose that money. In a fixed insurance contract that's principally insured? No. No. It's like, what if a bank CD at one bank was paying 6 and another bank would lend you the money at 4? Now your CPA is going to tell you, you got to pay off that 4%. No, then I'm killing all my arbitrage because then I'm only making 4, right? If I do that. So if you could borrow the money at 4 and invest it at 6 and keep the 2. Next question is, how many times will they let me do that? Well, in our program, they'll let you do it 14 times. You put in 1, they put in 14. Now, why do they require you to put in 1 into the insurance contract? That way, the insurance contract is the only collateral for the note. It doesn't go on your credit report. They'll even run your credit report. Nothing else is obligated but the policy. All right.
So you're saying if you have, for example, let's say you want to put in $100,000, right? Are you saying they'll do 14 times that in terms of what you can invest on the bank's money? So would it be like 1.4 million inside?
Mm-hmm. So what if you put in $100,000 once? It's a principally insured account. You're not going to lose your $100,000. Put in $100,000 once. And the bank put in $100,000 14 more times. How much money are you making on your $100,000? The bank gets its money and interest back later.
Yeah.
And you can set it up where they get it annually or they get it on the other end. The bank likes to do the other end because they hold that in a portfolio and just let it ride. Okay. You're helping the bank's legal reserve portfolio that makes the bank a bank because they have to have legal reserves to do that. So next question is, how many times do you let me do it? So here's the other thing that happens. I'll have a client put in $100,000 once. Just lets it ride because it's for the future because you're going to get tax-free income. These insurance contracts pay tax-free income just like an annuity would, only it's better because it's structured a little differently than an annuity. It doesn't have all the restrictions of an annuity. So it actually works out better than buying an annuity. And it can earn better than most annuities too. You put $100,000 once, and let's say 4 years in, you say, hey, I just made some money from an investment or a business deal. I got an extra $100,000. Okay. Can I put it in the policy? Yeah. Now, all of a sudden, the bank starts putting in $200,000 every year. I have clients, I have one right now. I just finished doing the applications yesterday afternoon. It's in process. 4 years in, the guy comes back and says, I want another one on my wife, and I want another one on my child. We're going to have a hard time getting the child insured for a whole lot more. Might not be able to do another one on the child.
Is it like an age restriction thing, or?
Well, you have to qualify what's called insurable risk. So what are we trying to replace for this child? I'm probably going to get it through because they're all trust owned and it's part of a family trust. And the underwriter will probably approve it because they're going to realize it's not the insurance, it's the cash value for the future for the family and what they're using it for. I might be able to get it approved. So we'll see. We are going to be able to get something, just not as much as he's putting in.
Yeah.
He's wanting to do what my grandfather did for me. And that was my grandfather bought a New York Life whole life policy when I was 12. Put a single payment in. I've added to it over the years. I've run the math. If I'd have put the same money in an S&P no load, no fee mutual fund like Dave Ramsey recommends, the mutual fund would be worth more than the New York Life policy. But once I withdraw money and pay the income taxes, it's worth significantly less.
That's where you lose out.
You see, his math is incomplete, and he knows it's incomplete. That's the worst part about it. I don't want to pick a fight with Dave Ramsey. He can be incredibly troublesome if you pick a fight with him. So, but which tells you he knows he's not right. He just has a dogma that he's promoting. he gives some good advice, like don't run up your credit cards, don't buy too expensive a car, buy a more modest house. He gives some good advice. Just on the back end, the final investment advice will keep you middle class forever if you follow it, because they never, really address all expenses. Now, I've said this on here before. Taxes are just an expense, and it must be managed like every other expense. Okay. Just like you get a new hot water heater because you want to save money on gas or electricity, right? Because the old ones just really, you put solar panels on the house because they pay for themselves over time. So we manage expenses. You shop for better homeowners insurance and car insurance and stuff like that, right? So you got to manage expenses. You shop at the outlets rather than the expensive mall, right? Same shirt, half the price, right?
Yeah.
So, you want to manage expenses. Keep in mind, taxes are just an expense, and it must be managed like every other expense, or it will consume a lot of your wealth. If you approach it from that paradigm, you start looking at using these vehicles to manage exactly that. Because when you get into retirement, you don't have any deductions. House is almost paid off. Kids have moved out. You're not working anymore. You got fewer deductions. So you can get kicked up into a higher tax bracket much more easily because you have fewer deductions. So, so it's not your marginal tax rate that matters. It's your effective tax rate that matters. You get two people side by side, and one guy's got $1 million worth of income from tax-free sources. It can be something as simple as muni bonds, right? The other guy's got $1 million coming straight out of an IRA. Net spendable income is different. How much more does that S&P index mutual fund have to make to give you the same net after taxes?
Yeah.
You have to consider those things. And that's the problem with financial advisors. They don't do the math. That's the problem with CPAs very often. They don't do the math on that. When you say, well, I got to pay the taxes. Well, you made a profit. That's what you owe. Not if you made arrangements to legally not owe it. So what is my net? What do I get to spend to live on? And the other thing with these insurance contracts is if you need $100,000 to live on, you pull $100,000. If you have an S&P index mutual fund, you need $100,000. In our state, you got to pull 150 to net 100. Well, what happened to that other 50? It's gone forever. It'll never make any money for you. Politicians will just use it to dream up more ways to take more from you. So, right?
Yeah. No, yeah, you're right.
So back to the OPM program. It's part of a larger tax plan. It's not the only thing you should be doing. I'm not saying you shouldn't invest in the market. I love stocks. I love the market. I pay tax on stuff I make in the market. It's not always tax-free. That's fine. But make your income, your actual income that you depend to live on, come from a different source so it lasts longer. And it'll last longer because it has less expenses, and taxes are the number one expense. So just like you want to reduce fees and commissions and other things you're paying in your investments, you need to reduce the taxes you're paying in your investments as well. And people don't realize how much control they have over that. So back to the OPM program. Make a single deposit, let a bank make 14 deposits, and see what you get out the other end. You'll be shocked. And when the market's down, over the years, coming up on 20 years doing this, when the market's going gangbusters, clients are like, Kev, hey, it's I'm doing pretty well in the markets today and everything else. Can I reposition some money out of one of those insurance contracts over here? And I said, no, you can, but I don't recommend it. Then the market, like in 2015 when the market dipped, I'm glad I didn't take money out of that insurance contract. I left it over there, right? It's just, of course, this isn't my first rodeo, but it's their only rodeo they'll ever do, right?
Yeah.
So I just kind of chuckle to myself on their paradigms about this advice I'm giving here change based on the mood swings of the market. And you tell people all the time, it's a long ball game. All right.
Yeah.
Don't be that guy running the New York Marathon that decides to sprint the first 5 miles. Look, I'm ahead of everybody. Let's see how that works out at mile 26.
Yeah, right.
Right. It's a long ball game. Yeah. It's a long race. Whatever metaphor you want to use. Now we have On the list, there's, I don't know, 30 plus. There's about 5 banks that we use 99% of the time, just because we already have all the forms and their rates are the same as the other bank. And, but finding the money, people are like, well, what bank would ever do that? We have no problem. There's a long list that are very eager to write those checks because you're helping them with their legal reserve portfolio.
So could you theoretically, if you have, a Roth or a 401k or, traditional IRA, could you make that, or turn that into an OPM and make that your retirement plan? Or how would something like that work?
You can, but you can't do it directly. You have to do it indirectly.
Got it.
And we have ways of doing that. We have ways of doing that.
Got it.
Now, some of the money, we're just going to pull it and pay the tax now and get it over with.
Mm-hmm.
You just pull the Band-Aid off. I had a guy do such a big plan. We ran the numbers. He did such a big plan. He called me later and he goes, yeah, I just wrote that check. I was down at the CPA doing my taxes. I just wrote the check we're sending in. This has been years ago now. But because now I usually pay electronic, right?
Yeah.
But I said, so how'd it go? And he goes, man, I was tearing up writing that check. It hurt to let go of that money. But it would have been worse later. He goes, oh, no. He says, I agree with your math. It was just still hard to write the check. He says, well, you got to divorce yourself from your business partner in that account. Uncle Sam's a lousy business partner. He puts nothing into the system, changes the rules at will, and wants 30, 40% out the other end as if he contributed to anything you're doing. No, he was a nuisance the entire time. Lousy business partner. And you can't get rid of him entirely, but you can start tamping him down quite a bit with just very different planning. So what I want to tell your listeners is start thinking about net, and taxes as an expense. And everything you do in investing, you got to run the numbers because you'll run the numbers one way. And if you leave some expenses out, your numbers are irrelevant. They're wrong. This is how people end up in retirement running out of money. Like, I thought I had enough money. Your math was faulty. When we do those installment sale trust, the IST installment sale trust, every year we have people tell us, no, I'm just going to pay the tax. And we get quite a few of those because we talk to an awful lot of people. We do a lot of that, right? Every year starts in February. I start getting phone calls. Every year I get 6 or 8 of them because nobody else has it hurts their ego to give me a call, right? So they just don't call. They call up and say, my CPA just got done running the math. It tells me what I owe. It's twice what he told me I would owe if I just paid the tax because he didn't consider recovered depreciation. He didn't consider the state tax. He says, oh, no. Here's the tax rate for gains taxes. Don't worry about it. Just pay it. Better off just to pay it. And they're like, Kev, can you help me? When did you close escrow in the business or real estate? Oh, September. Nope. Can't help you. You're done. You owe it. What am I going to do? I think you need to find out if your CPA's got a malpractice insurance policy, E&O, errors and omissions insurance policy, and file a claim because he committed malpractice when he gave you that advice. Because he didn't sit down and run a specimen return and run the numbers. Financial advisors are the same way. That's why financial advisors avoid putting so much in writing. But they have you sign that form with all the fine print, right?
Yeah.
You can't come back later for the bad advice because did they run the numbers? What's going to give you the net most income? And then, so these insurance contracts are used for many things. We use them as an income tool. We use them as an estate planning tool. We use them as a source to go to in emergencies because they provide a whole lot of other things. For example, the death benefit can be converted to 60 equal payments if you're terminally ill. What if the chemotherapy works? Well, you only took, 26 payments. You can stop and leave the rest in there growing. You see? Well, you mean I don't have to die to get access to all of it? No, the cash value is yours either way. You have access to that. And the death benefit is yours if you're terminally ill or have Alzheimer's or dementia, if you can't do 2 of 6 activities a day of living, things like that, right? So it's much more flexible than people realize. So we call it in one of our books we're writing, the forgotten asset. Before I forget, there's going to be some people watching this that remember the old saying, buy term, invest the difference. Did you know that was all born out of a scam by a guy named A.L. Williams in the 1980s to convince senior citizens to give up their annuities and whole life insurance policies and give him that money to put in mutual funds? Look how much cheaper this term insurance policy is than that whole life policy you have. And it didn't work out for those people. And they lost all the guarantees they had. And he was sued, imprisoned for a short time, and barred from the industry.
Jeez. But
he sold that entire company to something that became Primerica. We've all heard of those multi-level marketing advisors, Primerica people. The buy term, invest the difference was faulty math from the very beginning. And they knew it, and it was a scam, and he was prosecuted for it. But that phrase, buy term, invest the difference, stuck, because financial advisors make more money if you do it that way. Wall Street makes more money if you do it that way. And it was, research the history of this.
Yeah.
It was all born out of defrauding older Americans out of their safe, secure, guaranteed things to roll the dice in the market. And when it came time to renew that term insurance policy when they were 70, they couldn't afford the premium then. Because all of a sudden, what was cheap when you were 50 got real expensive at 70. All right.
Well, on that note, that was a lot again. Shoot, I was like back to back with these ones were great. We had a lot of information today too, but it was so much simpler. I mean, after hearing everything out and slowing down, and when you, like you said, it's like a car, when you first get in, it's a lot to deal with. Especially for a manual, for example, I haven't even drove stick yet, but even with automatic, you're like, okay, I have to hit the brakes before I do it, or else everything's going to break, or how fast do I go? You're looking out for cops every time, you're going somewhere, making sure you're doing a full stop. Now, once you hear about all this, you're like, oh, this is easy. It's not as complicated. I can go, 45 and a 40. I'm not too worried about. Maybe even 50, maybe even 55.
As we're explaining these things too, there'll be some terminology that you're still working out as you're listening to everything we're saying, so it sounds more complicated. Once you learn some of the terminology, then you start discussing the strategy. Then you can look at the strategy with what we call clear eyes. It's not all clouded up with new information you're unfamiliar with. Yep. Then you start realizing this is actually very straightforward. It's not nearly as complicated as it initially sounds. And it's done all the time. But here's the thing. The wealthier the client, the more they do it. And they say, well, it's more suitable for them than it is for you. It makes the exact same rate of return if there's 6 zeros on that policy as there is if there's 3 zeros on that policy. It's the same return. I'm not kidding. It's exactly. And the same tax benefits. It's just the wealthier people are getting better advice. And the poorer people are listening to radio show people that tell them to do things that make them more money, right? So, and again, it's never do all of just one thing. I know people that have made a lot of money in investment real estate, and they won't do anything else. And when they have a crisis or an economic thing happens, all of a sudden they're kind of stuck with a whole bunch of illiquid assets. And the next thing you know, they're selling things when it's not a good time to sell it, or refinancing when it's not a good time to refinance, because they were not diversified. They got too heavy in one segment because it's all they know and it's all they've made money at. That is as bad as not doing that. So you remember in scriptures, everything in moderation?
Yep.
Yeah, see? That's what, 3,000-year-old advice or something. It's built, and it's truth is truth. Everything in moderation. So look at these things. Have us run illustrations. As you can tell, I like to teach, and have us run an OPM illustration for you and explain it. Then tell us you're not interested. That's okay. There's no pressure. There's no obligation. We don't charge for it. The reason we don't charge for it, because 9 out of 10, when they go down the path and learn, they're going to do a little or some of it at least. But what I like is clients where their family and other advisors and CPAs told them we were wrong. 10 years later, are coming back saying, I want more.
I'm ready now, right?
Yeah. No. I have one guy, his CPA just literally screamed at him over doing this. That's always a bad idea. Now the CPA gives us referrals. That took 10 years. The CPA owns one himself. I don't want to tell you who it is because we have a relationship with them now. They actually do taxes for the trusts and stuff that we offer.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's, but it started out as a negative thing. But as time went on, he's can't argue with it anymore, right? Because now it's got that history.
That's pretty sweet.
Yeah.
Well, also too, I know we talked about the installment sale trust a little bit. We talked about it today. We talked about it a little bit. I think episode 1 and 2. Next week, I really want to dive into that with everybody and kind of break that down. I know we've been mentioning it here and there. I've had a couple little snippets where we discuss it, but next week we're going to dedicate our time to that and really breaking it down. I've gotten really familiar with the process, so for me, I feel more, I guess you say, attuned with that conversation in comparison to this one. So I'm excited for next week for everybody to hear about that and how you can sell your business or property tax free. But for today, we're going to leave it at that, and we're going to tap into it next week. So thank you guys again for hopping in. Kevin, thanks again for taking the time to come with us.
Oh, thank you. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely.